Welcome back for another deep dive. And today we're looking at, I guess you could say, a trend that's really changing how the American family looks. It's young adults living with their parents. We've got a really interesting mix of sources we're going to unpack here. Personal stories, economic data, cultural observations, and all this is going to help us figure out why this is happening and what it all means for all of us.
Yeah, and what's fascinating is that the pandemic, it definitely played a role. It didn't actually start this trend.
Right.
The data shows this has been going on for years. So that kind of suggests there are, some deeper things going on, like in the economy and society.
It's a trend with some pretty big numbers, too. Did you know that like 1/3 of Americans, those aged 18 to 34, they're actually living at home right now?
Wow.
That's a huge chunk of the population. So by the end of this deep dive, what we want is for you to really get like, what's pushing this trend? What are some possible solutions people are talking about? And yeah, what it could mean for the future.
Yeah, totally. And actually, one of the sources we have, it tells the story of a 27-year-old. She's been living with her mom in New Jersey ever since she graduated college back in 2019. And her goal, well, she's trying to save up enough money for a down payment on a house, which seems like a pretty common reason these days for why people are staying at home.
Yeah, it really shows you the money problems millennials and Gen Z are facing. I mean, they're dealing with high housing costs, student loan debt, and wages that just aren't keeping up with how much everything costs. It's not surprising they're kind of putting off those big life steps like moving out.
Yeah, for sure. And this delay in what's called household formation, well, it actually has a ripple effect across the whole economy. Like the Federal Reserve, they estimated that if young adults moved out at the rate they used to, they would be spending, get this, an extra $113,000 every year.
Whoa, that's a ton of money.
Exactly.
It makes you realize that this isn't just a, personal thing or a family issue. It really affects the whole economy.
Oh, absolutely. The lack of spending from these young adults, it could actually be contributing to a slowdown in certain industries and sectors.
Yeah, and it's not even just the spending that's on hold, right? Think about all the jobs that could be created, like in construction, retail, and other industries, if more young people were setting up their own homes.
Totally.
Yeah.
This delay in forming households, it could even be a factor in why economic growth is slower.
And speaking of, challenges, let's talk about the student loan crisis. It's putting a huge amount of pressure on young adults, making them make tough choices about their money and their futures.
Yeah. The sources we have, they paint a pretty serious picture. Like one person actually joined the military just to pay off their student loans, and another had to go and get more degrees just to find a job that paid well.
Wow.
And, that delays them getting into the workforce and puts them behind financially.
It's really sad to hear those stories.
Yeah.
It shows how deeply this issue is affecting people's lives. It makes you wonder if the system is, set up in a way that's actually hurting young people instead of helping.
Yeah, that's a really important question to ask. Is college costing too much? Do high schools teach enough about managing money to prepare students for, the realities of student debt? I mean, these are complicated issues, and they need to be addressed if we want a fairer system, a system that actually works.
Yeah. It's clear that student loan debt is a major part of why young adults are living at home. It's not about spending money carelessly. It's about, just trying to survive in an economy that's feeling tougher and tougher to navigate.
It's kind of interesting, when you think about it, how in America we expect people to move out at 18, but in other cultures, living with multiple generations is totally normal.
Right.
It makes you wonder if our focus on being independent, well, if that's always the best way to do things.
I see what you mean. Like in many other cultures, living with your extended family, it's actually seen as a good thing, a sign of strength and support. Not like you failed or you're too dependent.
Right.
It's like a safety net,
Right.
You share expenses and it creates a strong community.
Exactly. And even here in America, living with multiple generations, it can have real benefits. Think about being able to share expenses, help with childcare, or even caring for older family members. It's just having more family support.
It's not always just about money struggles either. Some young adults might choose to live at home to build closer relationships with their family or take care of their parents as they get older. It's putting family first instead of just focusing on being independent.
Right. But we can't ignore the fact that for a lot of people, this isn't really a choice. They have to do it because they can't afford to move out. And if the main reason young adults are staying home is because they can't afford to leave, well, that tells us there's a bigger problem. Not enough affordable housing.
Yeah, definitely. We need to find ways to make housing more affordable and accessible for, young people who are trying to start their lives on their own.
Yeah. One solution could be to just have more affordable housing, whether that's through government subsidized housing or, maybe rent control measures, or even incentives for developers to build more affordable places.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Wow.
What about policies that, I don't know, encourage older folks to downsize? Could that free up some more housing options for younger people?
That's an interesting thought. I mean, maybe there could be tax breaks or programs that encourage empty nesters to move to smaller homes or retirement communities. That could open up those bigger homes for families and young adults.
We should also explore different ways of doing housing altogether, like co-living spaces or those really small apartments, the micro apartments, things that actually fit the needs and the budgets of, young people. It's about thinking creatively and finding new solutions to this really complicated problem.
For sure. It's also important to remember the bigger debate going on in society about this whole trend. Some people see young adults living at home as like a sign that society's failing. It means there isn't enough economic opportunity and it's hard for younger generations to move up.
Right. Like they're stuck.
Yeah, exactly. They're saying it shows that the system isn't doing enough to support young people or give them the chances they need to be independent and successful.
Right.
But then there are those who see it as a practical solution. They say it's good for financial stability, family support, and sharing resources. It's like a positive thing, being able to live in a multi-generational household.
So it's not always a bad thing.
Not at all. It kind of challenges the traditional idea of what success means. It focuses more on family and community than just individual achievement and having a lot of stuff.
It's a different way of looking at things.
Yeah, and it's fascinating to see these different viewpoints. It feels like this trend is making us rethink our values and what's important to us as a society. Like, what does it really mean to be successful? Is it about individual achievements and material wealth? Or is it about something more?
Maybe it's about both.
Maybe. It could be that this trend is encouraging us to rethink the traditional milestones and be open to different ways of becoming an adult, ways that might put more emphasis on family, community, and sharing responsibility.
Yeah, it feels like this whole thing is making us really think about, how we define success and what it means to be a family, like now in the 21st century.
Definitely. It's complicated and there aren't any easy answers. But what's important is that we're actually talking about it, having open and honest conversations about the good and the bad of this trend.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what are the main takeaways you'd want our listeners to remember?
Well, I think first off, this trend is happening because of a bunch of things all coming together. Economic pressures, cultural norms that are changing, and family dynamics that are shifting. It's not just about being able to afford things or making personal choices.
It's about the bigger picture.
Exactly. And we need to challenge how we think about success and independence. Maybe this trend is telling us that those old markers of adulthood, like owning a home and being financially independent, maybe they're changing. Maybe we need a new understanding of what it means to really thrive.
Like maybe there isn't just one way to do things,
Yeah, there are many paths to a fulfilling life, and they might look different for different people. Maybe it's time to rethink the whole idea of the American dream, see if it still makes sense or if it needs an update for a new generation. I mean, they're facing different challenges and have different priorities.
Right, they have different values.
This deep dive has shown us that this thing, young adults living at home, it's not just a fad, it's here to stay. It's telling us about bigger changes happening in society, and it's making us have important conversations about family, money, and the future we're all building together.
Like a call to action, right?
Yeah. To think critically, question our assumptions, and really talk about what kind of world we want for ourselves and for future generations. A world where everyone has the chance to thrive, no matter what their situation is or what path they choose.
I like that. It's about having empathy, understanding what people are going through, and working together to find solutions that work for everybody.
Totally.
So to our listener, we encourage you to keep thinking about these questions, these complex issues, and talk about them. The future of family, work, and community in a world that's always changing. What does the American dream mean to you? What's the role of family in your life? How can we create a society that supports everyone across generations and different situations?